Hi, I'm Erica. Today is day 3 of our self-care series, and we're going to be working on the hips. The tools that I'm going to use today are the standard size yoga therapy balls, and you can also use the alpha for these. If you don't have a larger alpha ball, I recommend using the standard size balls and getting a fat book or a yoga block so that you can prop the smaller size therapy balls up on something. And I will show some foam roller modifications too, if you only happen to have a foam roller. But since most of us are probably sitting to begin, let's start by doing a sitting roll. We'll get right into our hamstrings and then our glutes and piriformis to start. So take a single ball out of the tote and come up onto a chair. And just take that ball and bring it right into your buttocks, just below the sit bone. Not on the bony part, but just below it. And then I just want you to switch side to side on that a little bit. Just rolling across the top of the hamstring. Going opposite the direction of the fibers. We call that transverse friction massage. And then maybe settle on a point there. And then see what happens if you start to swing the leg in and out. Now we're still getting a transverse action, but we're doing more of a pin and stretch. We're pinning the ball down and rolling the fibers over it. And I'm starting here, even though this is a little bit sensational, a little intense for people, just because it's a nice, comfortable way to start. This will be the only roll that we do in sitting, and then we'll work our way down to the floor for the rest of the session. And then from here, see what happens if you straighten the leg out and then bend the leg again. Great. And then now shift the ball off of the hamstring tendon, that attachment point, and bring it down a little bit. Somewhere towards the middle. You can, oops, I have a little stool here. Somewhere towards the middle of the thigh. And you can do just a little kind of slide back and forth to find that just right spot. And then come back again to that rotation of the hip. So we're getting right into isolation of hip mobility. The hip moves, the leg moves like a pendulum, side to side. And so we're going across the fibers in the opposite direction that they run. And then pause, find that just right spot, a spot of sensation that you can tolerate, and then bend and straighten. And just bend to where you feel that first bit of resistance. You don't have to get it all the way straight, just note where the body starts to limit you. And then you'll find as you do it a few times. Hi, Daisy.
Hi.
Welcome. And then now roll down a little bit more. Find one more spot towards the bottom portion of the hamstring. And then again, bend and straighten. Bend and straighten. Tweezing out the fibers of the hamstring. Just going to fit where you feel resistance. And then rock side to side again. If you push down on your thigh a little bit, lean into it, that will give you a little bit more pressure. You're in control of the resistance and the pressure throughout the entire class. So provide as little or as much as is sustainable and supportive. And then let's find one more spot towards the end of the hamstring. And now I'm just going to move the leg. I'll turn towards you. I'm just going to move the leg in and out. I'll go right across those hamstrings. And then again, if you find a spot, what happens? Now I can't straighten my leg as much. Take about 3 or 4 or 5 more passes wherever you are on this side, whether you're going in and out across or pinning and stretching and straightening. And then remove the ball. We're going to stick with whatever side you're rolling. So stay where you are, but take that leg you were rolling now and cross it over the opposite. So you're in that figure 4 type stretch. Now take your ball and place it right in your buttocks area. So make sure that you're in the meaty part of the buttocks and then kind of lean into it. Yeah. And just see how it feels as you arrive. Hold some sustained compression in the area. Notice how the body initially reacts. Maybe the butt tightens. Maybe you push the ball out. So actually try that for a minute. Squeeze your butt on the crossed leg. Actually push the leg out with the muscle contraction. And then relax and see if you can sink into it a little bit more. You may even, if you have a chair with arms, it's really helpful too. You may lean to that side. Put a little bit more weight into it. But I have plenty of sensation just staying upright, just like this. Be really careful here not to push the leg forward, because see how my entire spine moved? Try to maintain alignment of the pelvis and the spine, and let the ball do the work. The ball and the posture. Take a few more deep breaths. And then release. And then just come back to sitting normal in the chair. And just notice the difference. Your thigh that you just rolled might feel a little flatter, almost like it's deflated as it rests on the chair under you. By rolling it, it allows those tissues just to relax on the surface. There's less resting tone or holding now. So let's go to the other side. Let's start up high on the hamstring, not on this bony sit bone, but so bring your hand right to the bony sit bone and then just come right off of it. So now I'm right underneath it. And then just arrive. Feel your weight shift into the ball. And then as you slowly get accustomed to the pressure, I'm rocking in and out a little bit just to ease myself in. You might start to create a little movement. Let's do a little shift of the hips first. So I'm just shifting the hips side to side. Going against the grain, or transverse massage of that hamstring origin. This is the area where most often we tend to get hamstring pulls, where a lot of people have scar tissue, or a lot of people have had injury before. It's one of those places that takes a long time to heal. So doing that transverse massage will actually get those tissues of the origin of the hamstring a little meatier, a little more resilient. And then from here, what happens, we're going to keep with that transverse action across. If you rock the foot side to side. If you have any questions at any time about the tools that you have or the position, just you can unmute yourself and ask me at any time. I'll help give you modifications. And then now try to straighten and then to bend the knee. And just go to where you feel it pull under the ball. We've all probably been spending more time sitting, so starting with the hamstrings is a nice place to start. When the hamstrings become too tight, they start to pull the pelvis backward. And then they do other things like put our back at risk. So this is a great roll. Now move the ball down a little bit, maybe more towards the middle of the hamstring. Just find that just right spot. You can roll a little bit to ease in. And then now rock the knee again, rock the foot rather. Bring the hip into internal and external rotation. This is a really important movement too, to be able to isolate the rotation of the hip. And now straighten and bend. Just going to that initial barrier, allowing the repetition and the time to smooth out the movement. And then now let's slide it down one more time, perfect. So you get now towards the ends of the hamstring. Maybe to find that just right spot, you actually first move the leg in and out a little bit. You actually abduct and adduct. The hip is a super mobile joint. It moves on 3 different planes. Has 6 different motions. And then some combined motions as well. And then now rock again. Foot back and forth. Internally and externally rotate. And so we'll try to free up the hip on all those different planes. We'll get to the front of the hip, the side of the hip, the back of the hip, and then the inside of the hip. Perfect. Couple more rounds, whatever feels right for you. And when you've had enough, you can remove the ball. And then cross the leg you just rolled over your opposite knee. And then take your ball towards the outside aspect in the fleshy part of your hip. And find that just right spot. And just notice how it feels. Just let the weight of your body and gravity pressing down into the ball do the work. You may arch the spine and round it a little bit to find that just right spot. And then come into stillness. Take about 5 breaths here.
Are we putting it below the sit bone or above the sit bone?
Above the sit bone. Yeah, come above the sit bone.
It's not really fleshy when I sit in this way.
Kind of sort of like lean into it a little bit. Like lean your body. If you're having a hard time kind of getting into it, sort of lean into that side. The bent knee side, you see as I kind of lean to the right. And if you're having trouble, again, that's where the kind of arch or round will get you in there. Yeah, there you go. And then just give a good glute squeeze. Squeeze the butt. As you squeeze your behind, feel how that pushes the ball out. And you can do this without the ball too, just coming into the stretch. If it's something you're efforting or struggling with, maybe just coming into the stretch is a little bit easier. And then release and feel yourself sink in. And then uncross your legs and just notice how much more you're sitting on the surface. Much more flesh is in contact with the surface. Have a much larger base of support, we call that, as you sit. So that's a nice way to start because we're in sitting. It's something you can do while working. It doesn't take getting down into the ground and stuff like that. And all you need is one ball. So we're gonna put the chairs aside now and we're gonna head down to the ground for the rest of the practice. So remove the chair from your area. And then I'm gonna put my 2 balls into a tote. And Daisy, can you just show me what you're working with? Do you have just 1 ball?
Yeah, just 1.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. And it looks a little bigger. We're gonna, so now come onto your back.
Yeah, it's a lacrosse ball.
Okay. So onto your back, knees bent. And now as you lie down, we're gonna come into the pelvic area. The pelvis area is really important to mobilize and to feel as we come into the mobilization of the hips. Because the most important thing about freeing up the hips is that we need to separate their movement from the movement of the pelvis. So take your balls, either the 2 balls in the tote or that single ball, and place it right under the sacrum. So the sacrum is the triangular bone at the end of the spine. And you're going to put it right on that bone, the back side of the pelvis, near the SI joints. And you're gonna arch over it so that the tailbone, the coccyx, presses down towards the floor. And then you're gonna flatten back, tipping the pelvis the other way. So we're doing anterior tipping down, pelvic tilting, and then posterior pelvic tilting. Moving the pelvis along that forward and back plane. The position of the pelvis is going to be really critical in the position of the hip. And rock forward and back a few more times, feeling how it creates a ripple actually up the entire spine. And then find stillness. And now let's take that set of balls, if there are 2, out from behind the back, and just notice how the pelvis sinks into the floor. From here, just take 1 ball, and let's all do the right side first. Let's take the single ball and place it right in the middle. Again, that fleshy part of the buttocks. And now what I want you to do is I want you to sway your hips, kind of like a hula action, so you're in line with the floor. It's like you're sliding across the surface of the floor over the ball. So the ball is going across the back of the hip, from the edge of the sacrum out towards the back of the hip, and to the side, towards the side of the hip, and then back towards center. Just exploring that territory, noting any tender points, just seeing how you're arriving there. And then pause when you find a sensitive spot. Let the pelvis again relax into the floor. Now, straighten out the right leg. Once the leg is straight, let's use the contract relax again. So squeeze your buttocks. As you squeeze your buttocks, you'll feel the whole pelvis lift up off the ball by the contraction of the muscle. Hold that for about 7 to 10 seconds. And then release that buttock squeeze. Sink slowly into the ball with all your weight. Maybe that spot released and there's another spot that you're interested in, so you could reposition the ball, and we'll do that 2 more times. Again, squeeze the buttocks. Notice how as you squeeze this time, you may feel more fibers of the gluteals engage. We're also re-educating those muscles. Hold it, and then release. Welcome. We have one yoga therapy ball underneath our right buttocks right now, lying on our back. And then one more time, engage the buttocks, squeeze your glutes, hold that 7 to 10 seconds. And then release. And from here, staying in this position, rock the toes in and out. So you just externally and internally rotate. Perfect, yep. The leg from the hip. So that you feel that motion coming from the hip socket. And then bend your knee again. Take a few more sweeps along the back of the hip, and then we're gonna come into that rotation through a larger motion. So just reset by giving a couple sweeps across the back of the hip, and then settle into a new spot of sensation. And now everybody take your hands to your hips. So place your hands right on those front bony points. And I want you to make sure that these bony points of the pelvis stay still as you let your right knee fall out to the side into a butterfly type position. Don't let it just plop, but just ease it in and then ease it back up. And go out until you feel the pelvis want to move or where you feel a bit of restriction, and then come back in. Do that a few more times. And then maybe next time when you get towards the end range, you pause and you give the right glute a good squeeze again. Holding it, contracting all of the glute fibers. Hold, 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 and then release. Perfect. Now, start to turn towards the right and actually shift your hips back so that you come onto your side and the ball is in that space right behind the bony point on the side of the hip. So you're right behind now the greater trochanter. Or you can just come up to your side and place the ball there. And I'm up on my elbow. You have complete control of how much weight you put into the ball. I'm a little bit more propped up, which will take a little weight off the ball. If I lie down all the way, my weight's gonna come over the ball a little bit more. I want that pressure to be sustainable for you. So right here, I kickstand my back leg out of the way. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna straighten out and then bend my bottom leg. And I'm getting now those hip rotators, not where they come off the sacrum, which we initially were working, but now right where they insert on the back of the greater trochanter of the hip. And this is fairly sensational. So grade the amount of weight. If you lean forward or back, you might be able to change the amount of weight you put in there. Grade the amount of weight you put into the ball. The slower you move, the more pressure there'll be. And there's always the option to just stay there. Stay and breathe. Sustains compression. And let time and gravity do the work. And then take your top hand and we'll actually just move the ball, reposition it now towards the front of the hip. And now you're gonna roll the pelvis a little bit more forward. The ball is still in the pelvis. I'll sit up so you can see. Here's the bony point of my hip. I'm just behind it and down just a little bit. So I'm above the greater trochanter, or the bony hip point on the side of the hip, and I'm to the outside of that front bony point. So I'm right where the tensor fascia lata begins, where that muscular component of the IT band begins. Now I'm gonna come lie right onto that. Again, I'm gonna come onto my elbow. And now here, you may notice that by rocking the pelvis forward, leaning forward or leaning back, you can control the amount of weight that you put into there. And just arrive, I'll watch for you to find stillness, perfect. Now take your top leg and cross it in front. We're gonna do that bend and straightening of the bottom leg again. Stretch it out and then bend it up and you'll feel it pull. What I want you to feel for is the pulling of the tissues underneath the ball. Make sure that bend and straighten is coming from the hip moving, from the thigh movement. If you just move the knee, you won't feel much. So move the hip forward and then push the thigh back. And then let's change this direction again. Now keep the hip grounded on the ball and see what happens when you lift the bottom leg up now. Hold that there. This is a hard movement to begin with, never mind when we have the pressure of the ball underneath us. And then come back down. Let's do that 2 more times. I really love doing these hip series because not only are they mobilizing the musculature and the tissues around the hip, but they're also training us how to reuse them all better. Again, lift your bottom leg up. And then come back down. Great. Let's do that one more time. Perfect. And then we're gonna all meet you, Daisy, just like that. So kind of come, just push yourself up to seated. And now we're gonna work on the IT band in a pretty different way. So a lot of times people will come in with the foam roller and they'll just scrub that IT band up and down. But what I wanna do is I wanna use some different techniques along the IT band. If you have one ball, it will be a little tender, so you'll stay more upright. I like putting 2 balls back into the toad or into a sock. And then I'm gonna come to the upper portion of the outside of the thigh. And if you have one ball, just go ahead, lean one ball, and then you're gonna lean into it. And rolling the hips can be pretty challenging. It can be like fatiguing and emotional, especially this outside line of the body. It's associated with detoxification of the body. And in our hips are generally associated with the emotional components. So you might just start to feel irritable or emotional as you do this. It's totally normal if these are things you haven't done before. And now I'm just gonna move the leg over the ball.
Is this on the IT band?
On the IT band, the upper half of the IT band.
Okay.
And Jen, since you have 2, you could come like this onto your elbow and move both legs together. So what we're doing is we are going across the fibers of the IT band. Rather than going in line, which so often we see people do, we're going across the fibers. So Jen, try to move the knees instead of the body. Knees come towards the chest, knees come down towards your feet. Yeah, so we're moving over the balls.
I feel myself going over the balls even though I'm doing it different.
And then pause wherever you are. Now see what happens when you straighten and bend. The lower you go in the outside of the thigh, the less intense it will be. So if up towards the top of the thigh feels way too intense, bring those balls down more. We'll work our way, we'll find another ball stop just above the knee. So in the bottom part, now it will be, in this bottom part, it will be easier to move. Yeah, perfect, exactly. And then try straightening and bending again. Couple more. And then relax. So let's, from here now, make our way onto our bellies. I would suggest getting a block or a book or something thick to put underneath you here if you're using a smaller tennis ball size. I'm going to bring my right side to face you so you can see. My favorite tool to use here is a larger ball, more softball shape. It's less pokey. So these smaller balls are like a thumb placing direct pressure on the body. That's why when you use something really hard like a lacrosse ball or something really small, it feels really intense. So I'll give you a couple options. There's this larger alpha ball size, and it's going to come right towards the front of the hip, just now inside of the pelvic bone. Or you can take a single tune-up ball, or you could even leave it like this to straddle that inside the hip on top of a book or a block. And if that feels too intense and you just want something more broad, you could try a foam roller as well. This could come, it's not going to be as direct, but you could put the edge of it inside of the pelvic ridge, and then you could kind of roll over the edge of it. So let's all meet there, whichever tool works best for you.
Could you say again where we're putting it? Is it on the hip crest?
So
Or the,
out the, actually do the, so straighten out the leg you're rolling and kickstand like that half frog position, the other leg. So take your left leg, that left leg's gonna come into that like Captain Morgan shape. And then the ball's gonna be right inside of the pelvic bone on the right side with your leg straight. And you just kind of find a few to kind of move it around till you find a spot. Right leg is straight, left leg is bent. Roll the front of the right hip. Because I'll show you right now, if I come into that position, I can move this ball around on the right side just a little by curling the toes under on the right, kickstanding the left. I can do just a little pump, a little pedal. Jen, try switching the position of your legs, like flip-flop the position your legs are in.
or start on the opposite leg as you did.
Okay. So the ball's under your left thigh?
Yeah.
Good, perfect. Okay, so now if you just pedal the foot a little bit, you'll really get in there. And then see if you can relax into the pressure. Like for me, I'm like, oh, I don't want to work so hard, so I'm going to come off of my elbows and actually let my head rest on my hands. And now from here, I'm going to try that pin and stretch method again. Instead of moving the ball, I'm going to move the joint below in order to get a little stretch underneath where the ball is landing on the body. So as I bend the knee, I only have to bend to about here until I feel it start to stretch. And then I'll bend and straighten the knee, and you'll notice as I do it about 8 or 10 times, that it starts to loosen up a little bit. I can go a little bit more. And then as you can bend the knee to about 90 degrees, see what happens if you windshield wiper the foot side to side now.
I have to go, but thank you. This was great.
Thanks, Daisy. If you want to email me, it's emerritt@healthwellpt.com or erica.merritt@iCloud. I'll send you the recording.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great. Bye. And then let the legs straighten out. Remove the props. Roll all the way onto your back. You can let the legs straighten out in front of you. And just notice the difference of how the legs are lying. Notice the difference in sensation in the front of the hip and the back of the hip. Maybe even notice the difference in sensation in the thigh and the calf and the foot as they rest on the floor. I even notice a difference in the whole right side of my body, how it's able to rest on the floor. And just observe that change. And then we'll begin again on the other side. So take your single therapy ball, place that single ball right under your left gluteal area now. And now start to sweep the hip side to side. So you're sliding across the plane of the floor. And then find a sensitive spot and then let your left leg straighten. So lengthen out the left leg so it's resting on the floor now. And then squeeze your left buttocks. As you squeeze your behind, notice how it presses the ball out by the tightening of the glutes. Hold that for about 7 to 10 seconds. And then gently release into the ball. Allow gravity to help you sink a little deeper. And then maybe you reposition, find another spot of sensation. And then squeeze the buttocks again. And then release. Do one more round, just like that. Squeeze, push the ball out. Feel even more glute fibers engage. See if you can get even more contraction this time. Hold, 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 and then release. And now rock the foot in and out with the legs straight along the mat. See if you can get that motion to come from the ball of the hip joint. So the foot's rocking in and out from the movement at the hip. And then find stillness. Bend your knee again. As you bend your knee, you may find you have to just reposition the ball a little bit. Always reposition the ball to that optimal spot or just right spot of sensation, of tolerable and sustainable sensation for you. And then maybe sweep along the back of the hip just a few more times to reset. And then we're going to come back into that rotational motion. So allow the pelvis to rest. Take your hands to the front hip bones. We call them the ASIS of the pelvis. Put your hands right on the front of your pelvis. And now without moving the pelvis or the spine, just let the knee begin to rock out and in. See if you can isolate the ball and socket motion of just the left knee. This is retraining disassociation of the hip or separation of hip and pelvis movement. When we have a breakdown of this movement, that's when we start to have SI joint problems, start to have low back problems. So part of this rolling technique is helping us to retrain those movement patterns. Beautiful. Now let the leg come out to the side. Allow it to fall fully out to the side now. And just allow it to stay there. And then maybe here, once you're in that rotated position, again, squeeze the behind. Squeeze your behind in that rotated position. And then release and sink a little bit deeper. And then now you may even let the hips start to rock over to the left so that the left knee comes towards the floor. And then do that one more time. Actually, just stay right there. Let the left knee rock out to the side. And give one more glute squeeze. Yeah. Squeeze your behinds. And then release. And now you can roll onto the side of the hip. This time I'm just going to take the ball out, turn onto my side. I'm going to place the ball behind the bony prominence of the hip. So I'm right, here's your greater trochanter, that bony point. I'm going to be right behind it, right where those hip rotators attach. And then I'm just going to find a spot of sensation, a just right spot. You saw my eyebrows wrinkle a little bit. So I'm going to tell myself, okay, soften and relax. Take a big breath. And then I'm going to use my bottom leg. I'm going to move my bottom leg up and down, kickstanding my top leg. So move the bottom leg. Yeah, there you go. And then straighten out to your bottom leg. And now lift that bottom leg up. Yeah. And then release. Good. Do that one more time. Lift the bottom leg up. As you lift your bottom leg, you're engaging the inner thigh. You're also getting more pressure, more localized pressure into the contact of the ball on those tendinous structures. And then release. Great. Now reposition your ball. It's going to go in front now of the bony point of the hip, but still on the pelvis. So imagine if you have a holster. It kind of goes right into that spot on the side of the hip. And then now here, I have to roll forward a little bit more to get into that spot. I'm going to actually come down a little bit more too, just like this. And then if you just rock the hip forward and back, kind of rotate the pelvis towards the floor, and then rotate your pelvis back, you'll find a nice spot somewhere in the range there that you can sustain. Perfect. Yeah, you can let your head rest all the way. And then maybe take your top knee in front, and then your bottom knee can again straighten and bend. So pull the bottom knee up towards your chest and then press the bottom leg straight as you pin and stretch those tensor fascia lata, those top IT band fibers. One more time. And then I'm going to do that leg lift again here with the pressure on the tensor fascia lata, the top of the IT band. So now lift the bottom leg. See if you can lift the bottom leg and hold. Try to straighten out your knee. Reach through your heel if you can, so the bottom leg is straight. And then let it drop down. Roll your body forward just a little bit more. Try to straighten out your bottom leg while it's on the floor. Yeah, and then lift it up again. Perfect, just like that. And then release. Last time. And then release. And now prop up onto your elbow. I'm going to put both balls back into the tote. And I'm going to come right onto the top part of the IT band. So we'll do 2 ball stops, the upper part of the IT band and the lower part of the IT band. And I'm going to move the legs over the balls. So I'm just going to pull the knees up towards the chest to go across. So we're creating a transverse friction or a cross fiber massage to the IT bands, kind of tweezing them up, picking them apart. Like you're trying to pull apart those fibers versus stripping along the length of them. And then what happens if you straighten and bend your knees here? Get a little pin and stretch. The higher you are on the IT band, the more tender it usually is, the more pressure there is. So as you can lower, it's a little more sustainable. And remember, you're in control of how much pressure you put. You could have this leg up and just be doing the bottom leg. And then if you haven't already, move the balls to the lower part of the IT band. And this is usually where stacking the knees is a little easier. And the more you press down into the side of the thigh, the more you're gonna pick up and pull the myofascial layers of the IT band and the outside of the thigh. And then when you find a sensitive spot, you can try straightening and bending the knees again, pinning and stretching. Make sure you're breathing. Try to let go of the efforting and just let the weight of the body do the work. And then at any time, you can always just sustain pressure. Just hold right there and let the body soften and relax into the balls. And then when you've had enough, when you're ready, remove them and let's go back to our belly. Here we'll come back to the front of the hip joint, above the crease of the hip, coming into the hip flexor, the psoas. So this time, placing the ball inside the left pelvic bone. Yeah. If you have the smaller ball, you can stack it up. Coming onto your belly. I like to keep the leg that I'm rolling straight and then kickstand the opposite leg. And then I curl my toes under on the leg I'm rolling. So I have a little propeller to move myself up and down to find that just right spot. And it's just little rolls. That's perfect. And then sustained compression is also great here. This is a great place to let your head drop and allow yourself just to melt into the sensation of where the ball and the body meet. Softening and allowing the ball to enter with gravity and time as the drivers for release. And when you're ready, see what it feels like to bend your left knee. Bend the knee of the side that you're rolling. Bending and then straightening. Starting slow, just going to where you feel the point of resistance. And then when you're able to easily get to about 90 degrees, windshield wiper, the bent knee, rotating the hip, internally and externally again. A lot of times, the restriction of the soft tissue, the myofascial structures, is not in the line of pull. Oftentimes, especially for the hip flexor, it's in this rotational plane. So it's nice to get that rotational motion. And then when you feel ready, you can allow the leg to drop again, back towards the floor. And then remove your props, straighten both legs out, And just roll right onto your back. And then again, notice how you feel. Let your feet turn out to the side a little. Maybe rock the feet to help them relax. And then feel the weight of the pelvis, the weight of the ball of the hip dropping into the socket, the heaviness of the thighs, the heaviness of the calves, the heaviness of the feet, as they all release into the ground and feel completely and supported and at ease. Notice the change in the quality of how you're able to lie on the ground after rolling. And let yourself just enjoy a moment of stillness. Before you roll to your side and sit back up to carry on with your day. Thank you.